Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deborah Uber, and I'm the Education Coordinator for the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center. We are happy to have you all here today and excited to bring you our newest webinar, Preserving Your Marriage While Building Your Family. Our presenter today is Dr. Carol-Peters Tanksley. Dr. Carol is a licensed medical doctor with over 20 years of experience practicing as an OB-Gyn as well as working in reproductive endocrinology. Aside from being a medical doctor, she also has a Doctor of Ministry degree, which, as I've heard, leads to a good amount of her friends affectionately referring to her as the Doctor. She is an active author, both blogging and also writing 2 books, Dr. Carol's Guide to Women's Health, which we will provide information later on in the slides, as well as Live Healthy, Live Whole. In her spare time, Dr. Carol enjoys speaking both for radio and television, and now for the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center. Her goal is to help people thrive in every aspect of their lives, physically, mentally, relationally, and spiritually. And we are so happy to have you here. Dr. Carol, we really appreciate you coming. I will go ahead and let you take over from here.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you for all joining here on this topic about preserving your marriage while building your family. This is something that I have been privileged to talk with and help couples with for about 25 years now. It's just a big part of my heart, and I'm really honored that Embryo Adoption Awareness Center and those others who are joining us today have given me this opportunity. I have seen some couples in some of their most painful and heartfelt moments going through this infertility journey. There are a couple that have just made such a deep impact on my heart and really highlight how the stress of infertility can impact the relationship between you as spouses. One couple I remember early in my career, they came to me when they were nearly 40, and for those of you who have been through the infertility journey, you realize how as the years go by, the difficulty conceiving becomes greater and greater. This couple knew that they didn't have a lot of time left to build their family, and now they were ready, they were financially stable, and they entered in with full guns blazing to infertility treatment. Went through several of the earlier steps, went through in vitro fertilization, got that positive HCG test. Thankfully, that only lasted for a couple weeks, and she lost her pregnancy very quickly. But that wasn't the worst tragedy. The real tragedy came when the lady, my patient, talked to me a couple months later and told me, our marriage is over. We're getting divorced. There's nothing more I can do. And my heart just fell as I knew how much they had put into building their family over the previous couple years, and now their marriage was over. That's certainly not the goal. Another couple more recently, well, more exactly another patient more recently, really touched my heart. She was in her mid-30s. She had successfully been through infertility treatment. She had a child, but she had some remaining vials of ovulation induction medications that were left over from her previous successful attempt in building her family. Now she was facing the reality that her husband was threatening to leave. He told her he did not want to be married anymore. She felt that if she could possibly get pregnant again, she might be able to hold on to her marriage. Again, such a sad and not the result that she or her family wanted. The last I heard, she was still technically married, but her husband was still threatening to leave. We did use the vials of her ovulation induction medication, but she did not conceive again the second time. Her husband was no longer interested in supporting her. He would not come to any of the appointments and did not give her any more money for any further fertility treatment. How sad. Another tragedy. And the biggest tragedy is that none of this really needs to happen. These are only 2 of the couples that I've experienced in my own medical practice who have seen how fertility stress can wear on your relationship, on your marriage. There's some fascinating research that shows this is all too common. A fairly recent study just a couple years ago showed that up to 27% of couples who had been through infertility treatment were no longer together some years after. Some couples had been followed for up to 12 years, some only for a couple years. Yes, this study did show that when infertility treatment was successful and the couples did have a child together, they were more likely to stay together. But too many of them were not, particularly sad. But it doesn't always have to be that way. There's another fascinating study showing that although at least the majority of couples said that for infertility and the related treatments did have a negative impact on their intimacy, on their sex life together, 50% of the couples interviewed in this study said they were actually able to come closer together through their infertility journey. And that's what I want to help you with today. My goal for this webinar is to highlight some of the ways in which infertility affects marriages. You probably see yourself in some of these ways. We'll talk specifically about how men and women may respond differently to the stress of infertility and how those ways of different responses can make the relationship challenges even more challenging, even harder, can pull you apart. But understanding that, like in the couples who were successfully able to come closer together, understanding some of those differences may help you get over those barriers and actually come closer together through this journey of building your family. And then I want to get real practical. I want to share 7 specific practical steps that you can take on a regular basis to preserve your marriage along this journey to building your family. However that journey continues, whether that's through infertility treatment, whether that's through embryo adoption, whether that's through traditional adoption, whatever the pathway to building your family. First of all, how women respond to the stress of infertility is not really a surprise. And statistically, most of you listening probably are women. You know how easy it is to take it personally. You feel a sense of failure, like your body is a foreigner to you when you can't get pregnant when you choose to. You obsess about every little symptom, about every day on the calendar. It's easy to get distracted. You feel emotionally fragile. Your hormones may be going up and down, and that makes it harder for you to handle just the normal stress. It can be difficult just to walk through Walmart past the baby section, or to see your friends or hear about them being successful in building their family. The anxiety and sometimes depression about the treatment, about your failures to get pregnant, and all that can go through the infertility treatment or adoption processes can be really, really tough on you emotionally and physically. But men can feel the stress too. I have a friend who is azoospermic. He and his wife have been through over 10 years of infertility and tried everything. They are now in the process of moving toward adoption. That journey has been a real challenge for both of them. So in my own friend circle, outside of even patients, I've seen some of these differences in how wives and husbands respond. If you as the husband are not dealing with male factor infertility, it can be easy to be more concerned about your wife than about infertility itself. Your wife is probably more focused on getting pregnant, where you may wonder how this happened to your wife. You may not recognize the woman that you are now seeing. Many men feel it's their role to fix things, and you can't fix this. You feel so powerless to help the wife that you loved and want to help. Many men especially miss the sexual spontaneity. That intimacy that you wanted when you got married isn't happening, first of all, because there's sex on demand. Second, your wife is preoccupied with other things other than intimacy, and that can be a real challenge. Many men feel overwhelmed by how intense their wives' response to infertility and infertility treatment can be. You're not sure how to handle that. One big difference that can be helpful for both men and women to understand: men frequently compartmentalize infertility and their feelings about building a family and are able to separate that from the other aspects of their life more easily than women do. Part of the obsession many women feel over infertility is that it impacts everything. You're never not an infertility patient. Men may more easily be able to put that into a compartment and be able to focus on job, on friends, even on the relationship more easily than women do. There are some common feelings in all men and women that easily come up through this journey of building your family. A sense of shame. There's something wrong with me. Why can't we make this work? What can I do to change it? And feeling very ashamed when you're not pregnant or you don't have a child. Blaming is just the opposite. There's something wrong with you. If one member of a couple is the primary biological reason that pregnancy is not happening, that blame can be pretty heavy. Obviously, there's the financial pressure. Intimacy is strained by being on demand. Social isolation, if you are used to being around couples that now are building their family and now they have children, you may not enjoy being around them the same, and they may not know how to interact with you the same, so it's easy to get and stay more isolated than you're used to. Why should you worry about your marriage during the journey of building your family? It can be so easy to feel like and say to yourself, let's focus on getting a child, having a child, building our family now, and our marriage will be there when we're done. That isn't always the case, and that's why I highlighted those couple stories at the beginning. If you do not focus on your marriage, on preserving your relationship during this journey, there's a chance it won't survive. Infertility is one of those stresses that you can recognize. Sometimes life throws us that we don't expect, but if you recognize how this aspect of your life is adding stress to your relationship, you can do something about it. You can take positive and preventive action to preserve and even strengthen your marriage through this journey, and that's what this webinar is about. And at least as important, if you are blessed with a child or children, you will need and want a strong marriage to bring that child into. One of the biggest tragedies is if you do successfully get pregnant or bring a child into your marriage through some type of adoption, embryo or traditional, and then your marriage does not survive, and the trauma to both you and the child as a result. You don't need to let that happen. So let's get practical. 7 specific keys, steps that you can take to preserve your marriage while building your family, whatever method of building your family you are focusing on at this point. Number 1, simply make the decision. Make the decision to invest in your marriage and make that a priority. A healthy marriage doesn't happen by accident. You know, we spend so much time investing energy or money or learning, being intentional about other aspects of our lives, even infertility or building your family or the adoption processes. We invest so much in other areas of our lives that we often fail to realize how important it is to invest in our most important human relationship at the same time. Make the decision proactively that preserving your marriage is as or more important than having a child. That's something that perhaps especially some of you women hearing may not like to hear. But I want to say very clearly to you, if you cannot focus on your marriage through this journey, I think you need to step back and work on that first. Getting pregnant, bringing a child into your home will not fix problems in your marriage. It will not strengthen a weak bond between you. It may be one factor that you can focus on together, and in focusing on that together, work through challenges and become stronger. But simply getting pregnant will not fix everything. That positive pregnancy test will not end all your stresses. And that's a mistake I see too many couples, or particularly women, make, thinking that once you get pregnant or once you adopt, all your problems will be over. That isn't. Your problems are in some ways only beginning. Taking time to invest in your marriage at this point will be one of those critically important factors you need going forward, whether or not you have as many children as you hope for. One part of that, I want to encourage you that if you don't both agree on a course of treatment, you'll wait until you can agree. It doesn't mean that you both need to feel as excited about the treatment as each other, but you do need to agree. Don't build a family simply because you can. The best reason to build a family and bring a child into your family is because you have so much love to share between you that imagine anything else but bringing a child into that family that you can love. That's the best reason. And the way you do that, you need to agree on. Take some time to work through those tough communication moments, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the other steps here. Making the decision to invest in your relationship regularly doesn't end when you get pregnant or bring home a child. Again, any parent will tell you that parenting children can be one of the toughest things you will ever face as a human being. You continue to need that relationship between you and your spouse through those challenges that parenting will bring. And developing those skills and patterns now can be very helpful in continuing those patterns to stay connected, to focus on each other at times, even after you bring home your prayed-for child or, God willing, children. Key number 2, make a plan together. Talk through and agree what treatments you'll try, how much money you'll spend, how long you will pursue fertility treatments, what treatments are okay with you, what kinds of adoption processes you are open to, the kinds of things that are outside of your comfort zone. You may not agree initially on all these details, but you need to come together as a couple in thinking through that plan. This is going to affect you for the rest of your life, and it's worth taking the time to agree. Again, you probably will not feel the same level of excitement at each point as your spouse does, but it's important to at least agree on the broad outlines of the plan. Your plan will change. Like my friend who's azoospermic and his wife, they've been through so many different kinds of treatments and are now at the point of pursuing adoption. That's okay. Talk those things through together. See this as a problem you are working through together rather than fighting each other. One of the downsides of some of our current medical technologies is sometimes we know whose, quote, fault the fertility problem is. Not always, but sometimes. And that blaming process can really push you and your spouse apart. See you and your spouse as standing on the same side, shoulder to shoulder, dealing with the problem of building your family together. your fellow soldiers addressing this problem rather than attacking each other. That can make a big difference. Number 3, communicate. And communicate some more and some more. That can be tough to do. If you know your spouse pretty well, which I hope you do, it's easy to hold back some of those feelings. You don't want to hurt your spouse. You may want to try something that maybe your spouse isn't completely in agreement with yet. Husbands, you often want to fix things, and you can't fix this. Women feeling out of control, if you control your marriage, at least you can feel you're controlling something, and you already know that doesn't work. Communication can help get past some of these things. On a regular basis, at least once a month, perhaps even more often, set aside some dedicated time to check in with each other. And I suggest you ask these 2 questions. Check in with your spouse's heart. What's the state of your heart in this infertility journey? And then be quiet long enough to listen. And of course, then share your heart in where you are at this particular point in the journey of building your family, whether you're in the middle of treatment, whether you're wrestling with what style of adoption, embryo adoption, traditional adoption. This is an appropriate question at all points along the way. What's the state of your heart right now as we build our family? And a second follow-up question, what do you need from me? Sometimes just specifically asking that question can get things out on the table. Take the time to listen as much as you talk. This needs to be a 2-way conversation. It needs to be in private. Check in with each other on a regular basis about how you're doing in this journey. Sometimes those conversations may be short. Sometimes they may be a lot longer. But you need to know where your spouse is and share where you are so you as much as possible can stay on the same page. Sometimes you may realize as you have these conversations that you need to take a break. Building your family can be an all-consuming process for periods of time, and sometimes you just need to step back. Okay, we're going to take a month off. We're going to take a couple months off and focus on our relationship and then come back to this again in a little bit. That's okay. That's part of what you can work through in these conversations. Step 4, you need intimacy without TTC, without trying to conceive. Sex on demand can become such a heavy issue between couples. There are at least some times during the month, during your journey together, when you need to focus on each other to the exclusion of your gametes. Make this about your spouse and not about any possible pregnancy. Make it about your relationship, not the what-ifs with embryo or traditional adoption. You need some time truly nurturing the intimacy bond between the 2 of you. Sometimes that may take some planning. You need to realize the things that help your spouse feel close to you, and men and women may respond a bit differently here. Husbands, your wife needs you to pursue her, not primarily her body. She needs you to focus on her. A little bit of romance can certainly help in this regard. Let your wife know that you see her, that you want her, that you care about her, whatever happens with building your family, that she is the one you still love, that you would still say, I do, all over again. And women, same thing. Show interest in your husband, not just his sperm. And here's a little aside. Many wives, whether you're trying to build your family or otherwise, may feel like, I'm just not in the mood, and I'm too tired or stressed or too preoccupied. I can't be sexual right now. Let me encourage you that sex begins in the mind, especially for women. For both men and women, but especially for women. You can choose to take a mental step in your husband's direction. Doing that will build the intimacy between you, and you may be surprised how your body responds. Look at him a little longer. Hold his eyes with your eyes. Take his hand and hold on to it. Make that kiss last and last, and just see how your body responds. Sex does begin in the mind. This principle remains true whatever happens as you build your family. Whether you get pregnant, whether you build your family through embryo or traditional adoption, when there are children there, these are principles you need to nurture that intimacy between you. Yes, intimacy is more than just sex. Intimacy is also the emotional bonding, the spiritual connection, the friendship between you. All of those are important. For the physical connection, remember that it does need to be intentional while you're trying to conceive or building your family in whatever way. Number 5, don't use your infertility, stress, hormones, or whatever the legal issues with your adoption process may be as an excuse for bad behavior. That's fairly easy to do. When you're stressed, when your hormones are raging as women, or when your wife pulls away, it can be real easy to excuse bad behavior, and it's just not worth it. Women, recognize that your hormonal behavior does impact your husband. The medications you're taking do affect how you feel physically. It does affect your emotions. You may feel on a roller coaster and you feel like your body and your mind you don't know how to handle right now. That's okay, but it still doesn't give you a free pass to be nasty, to be mean, to take it out on him. You are responsible for your own behavior, hormones or not. Just be real about that. Do what you need to take care of yourself, and we'll talk about that here again in a minute. Just realize that it's not all about you. Men, you can't fix this, and sometimes it's easy for you to pull away from what you can't fix. Your wife's emotions may feel overwhelming to you, and when you don't know what to do about it, a natural response for many men is to withdraw. Don't do that. Stay engaged even though it hurts. Some of the most precious times are when you and your spouse can perhaps be together and share emotions with each other in the middle of pain, in the middle of stress, in the middle of what feels like failure. Those can actually be some of the most bonding times. Push through the discomfort when you can't fix it. Choose to stay there anyway. And that can be such an important part of preserving your marriage. Your spouse is not the enemy, even though you may feel like it sometimes. Again, remember, you are on the same side with your spouse together dealing with this problem. It's not all about you. You are fellow soldiers fighting the same problem together, not fighting at each other. In the middle of all this, there is a lot of stress. This is part of how you can be responsible for your own behavior, even in the middle of an infertility or adoption journey. Take care of yourself physically. You know about the healthy exercise, healthy food. You need ways to manage your stress and help you feel capable in dealing with the normal stresses that come up through this process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at another time as well. Being responsible to take care of your physical and mental health. Here's a principle that I encourage just about every patient and couple I deal with to think about. You need to learn to feed yourself emotionally. We do that physically. Some food tastes better than others. Some food is easier to find. Some food is more nourishing and healthy than others. But you and I, as adults, are responsible for knowing when we're hungry, for choosing the food we need, preparing it, finding it, taking it into our body when we need it, you can do the same with your emotional and spiritual needs. Find things that fill you up. Maybe that's time alone. Maybe that's time in nature, journaling. Whatever it is, be intentional about filling up the places your soul needs, and you will have much more resilience to handle the stress and much more to bring to your marriage and relationship. And yes, you're going to mess up. You're not going to do this perfectly. There are probably going to be times that you lash out at your spouse. If you do, own it, acknowledge it, ask for forgiveness, and move on. Step number 6, ask for help. Even the most caring, loving spouse or friend can't read your mind. You may think you're giving hints, but be specific. Tell your spouse specifically how they can help you. Especially women, for your husbands, let your husband know what he can do. Most men of goodwill want to help their wives through their stress, and vice versa as well. Be specific. Tell your husband, for example, when I'm going through these treatments, I feel ugly, I feel fat, I feel emotional, I feel hormonal. I need you to tell me you still love me. I need you to tell me I'm still beautiful. Let me hear you say that. Give me a hug, hold me, let me be tearful if need be. Or for men, you can be specific as well. If you've been missing out on intimacy, say to your wife, ovulation is over for this month. We've got a weekend coming up. Let's spend an evening together and not talk about infertility. I want to focus on you. I need that from you. I need you to be my wife right now. Be specific. And many times that will help the communication between you, and your spouse may be more willing and able to help if they know specifically what you need. Don't limit it to just your spouse. You need other people too. Don't put all the responsibility for fixing you or taking care of you on your spouse. Reach out. Adoption support groups, infertility support groups, an infertility nurse. Reach out to others who are going through a similar journey to you. You can be mutually supportive. There will be parts of your journey that you can use to support others. There's very little that lifts your own spirits more than helping somebody else who's been through something that you've been through. You need to both receive that kind of help and give that kind of help. That's why support groups can be such a powerful way of dealing with the stress of the journey in building your family. Reach out. You'll be glad that you did. Number 7, invest in your marriage as much as in trying to conceive. Something brought you and your spouse together initially. Invest some time and money and energy in your marriage. You want that now, and you will certainly need it when you step into the next stage of parenting. If God willing, you do have children in your family. It takes being intentional, and you need to continue to invest that. You may feel like all your money and all your time is going into building your family right now. You need to invest time and money and energy into each other also, into your relationship. Don't neglect that. Do something together on a regular basis, ideally every week, but at least every month, that is just about the two of you, that has nothing to do with children, the adoption process, the infertility treatments. Invest in your spiritual life together. If you pray and are people of faith, pray together. Focus on just the two of you for a specific period of time, ideally at least a month and more often if you can. You need to enjoy today even while you plan for your future. God has put within you the desire to have children, to build a family. That is a beautiful thing. But enjoy the process. You don't know for absolute sure what the future holds. There is no guarantee about what your future will look like as far as children and parenting. But you do have each other now. Enjoy today, even while you plan for the future. Just to summarize a few of these points in preserving your marriage while building your family. Don't neglect what you have in your relationship right now in the process of trying for something you have no human guarantee about. It's worth investing in preserving your relationship. Make that decision to invest in your marriage as much as in the journey of building your family. And here's a truth that I believe with all my heart. If you don't learn to be happy while trying to build your family, happiness will not be guaranteed when you get pregnant or bring a child into your home. Focusing on learning to feed yourself now will help you at all stages along the way. I know I had to learn this in my own journey, even though not as an infertility patient myself, but learning to feed yourself and learning to be happy and enjoy the moment now will stand you in good stead going forward. I've enjoyed sharing this with you in a couple ways. How you can contact me if you're interested. You can find me on drcarolministries.com, drcarolministries.com. There's a link here on this slide to a resource guide I've prepared about reconnecting with your spouse. Feel free to take advantage of that. I certainly am eager to hear from you by email if you care to, Dr. Carol at drcarolministries.com. In my book, Dr. Carol's Guide to Women's Health, I have an extensive chapter, it's actually the longest chapter in the whole book, on the fertility journey. There's also chapters here on taking care of your emotional health as a woman, a lot of other things that you might think of when you hear about women's health, hormones and menopause and periods and pain and all that kind of thing, managing your diet, managing your weight, managing your stress level. So feel free to check that out. I would be most honored. And again, thank you so much for taking this time to pay attention to preserving your marriage while building your family.